drug abuse, cancer,
measles, diabetes, AIDS, cancer.
Good evening once again, and welcome to another Live Doctrine Call program. It's always a pleasure to be with you on a Tuesday evening, of course, to share information that can help you and will help us, to improve our wellness. Yes? So thank you for joining us, our viewers on GBN Television 7 and 11, our friends on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also our listeners on K105 FM. Dr. Nixon is with me as always, and tonight we want to be able to touch two topics, hopefully. That is if time permits, because of course there is so much that we can talk about. The first one being this week, folks, is World Salt Awareness Week. And it's also road safety awareness. So we're going to see how the time goes, and we're going to look at that. But we're going to start with World Salt Awareness Week. Now, salt is something, of course, as we know, it adds great flavor, it helps with, preserving and all sort of wonderful things you can think about that salt can do. Don't talk about our salt meat, our salt pork and all of these things. Great, but, and this is where I am going to bring in Doc. Doc, good evening and welcome. It's a pleasure again. And let me also wish you belated Mother's Day greetings.
Thank you very much. I had a wonderful Mother's Day on my sofa.
I'm happy.
Yeah, that's not. But thank you very much. We did wish other people happy Mother's Day last week.
Last week, yes, we did. Yeah. Yes, we did. So this evening, Doc, we want to look, as I said, at these, hopefully these two areas, but I think it's important that we start with salt awareness. It is something we've looked at before, I think maybe about a year or two ago when Mrs. Brown was with us. We looked at salt, sugar, fats, but it's important to sometimes re-emphasize these topics because they're very important, and there's a lot that we need to know and understand about these things when it comes to our wellness. So, Doc, Salt Awareness Week. The great tasting, wonderful flavor, all of that. But...
So do you know that salt was used as currency?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I think that's something very important.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we use salt? What do you use salt for? Okay, let's take us back 100 years. Mm-hmm. You did not have a Samsung fridge.
That's right.
You probably have more than a Samsung fridge, or we're just saying Samsung for so. Mm-hmm. You did not have a Samsung fridge in your house. How did you go and buy meat every day?
No, we would buy. We would
hunted.
Yes, and then we would con the meat.
So salt was means of preservative.
Yes, it was a preservative.
It was as to preserve the meat so it stays. You have corn pork and it's just there. If you do it bad, you're gonna get worms. If you don't do it bad and put like a bay leaf and clean it properly, you have pork forever.
That's right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we buy salt meat in like a brine in a bucket, it's there. So salt predominantly was for preservation. Okay? And then, what else? Why we like it so much?
Flavor, that
nice.
that taste, okay? That taste, yes.
It is nice. So there are two fundamental reasons why we use salt. One, as a preservative, to keep it, to prevent our foods from spoiling. And two, to flavor the food. Our challenge lies currently in the fact that we're eating too much of the salt.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the Dr. Sonia and most of the people are looking on. I'm sorry I didn't say goodnight. I'm very sorry, people, for not greeting. So greetings to everyone on this fabulously rainy night for me. I may not be able to hear you soon, but go on. So when your doctor sends you to do your blood test and to look at how your kidneys function, because your kidneys kind of balance the salt and sugar, and it removes what is in surplus. That's when it's working well, right? And like most of the tests you do, most of the blood tests you do have a limit, right? So salt goes 130 something to 140 something millimoles per liter, right? But hear me now. Why is there a limit? Why do you think there's a limit as so much in your blood?
So, okay, I will answer that by
I don't want any big scientific...
No. I as a matter of fact, I'm going to answer by sharing a little bit of information. So we know it, as we said, we established it Salt Awareness Week. So let me just share this. World Salt Awareness Week aims to encourage the implementation of evidence-based interventions to reduce salt consumption in the population. The primary health effect associated with diets high in salt is raised blood pressure, which increases the risk of cardiovascular diseases, gastric cancer, obesity, osteoporosis, and kidney disease. There's some others.
And worse than diabetes. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's not the answer I want from you now. Why is it that when you look at your bloods, there's a range? Because you need to have some.
Yeah.
Okay? You need to have some within a certain limit. So it says X to Y. If you're under, you're hyponatremic, you're low. If you're above it, you're high. And both things have their challenges. Okay? So it is important to remain within the limits.
Right.
If not, we'll have the challenges. If it's high, we can face the challenges you just speak about, getting high blood pressure, right? And leading to strokes and all the complications, etc., heart attacks, whatever it is. Now, the aim to get to 6 grams in 6 moves, is that what it is? You don't want to take more than 6 grams. We used to say 5, but they say 6 for round off, which is like a teaspoon of salt. Regular salt, regular cooking salt, right? 6 grams. But that is over 24 hours. You can't have more than that in what you consume over there. And that's a lot of salt. Okay? That's what, if you're healthy and you don't have any complications or any illnesses and things are working good and your kidney can eliminate properly and stuff, 6 grams is what you need in order to keep, because you need your salt for your muscle contraction of your muscles and your muscles on your body and then your heart and everything. You need to have that balance, right? And with the kidney function, depends on how high it is. The kidney decide I'm filtering it more. I'm going to filter less. So you need salt. Right? There is a place for salt in your body. Now, one of the challenges that we have is that we in the Caribbean and in the world, our populations have become accustomed to eating a lot of salt. Because like I say, salt can be nice. So if you bought food on the road, and a lot of us buy food that, from vendors in restaurants, people with a little cook shop and stuff. And it's good to support local business, but some of them, the salt is just too much.
Yes.
Right? Way, way too much. And they know, but guess what? We're already addicted to that salt, that high salt flavoring in our foods. And I'm going to show you my story that when I first came back to Grenada, I don't really use a lot of salt. And I came back and it was oil down day in the ministry, right? And I get my oil down from the top. So I don't have a whole lot of salt, right? And the lady who came after me get hers from a little lower down on the side with the gravy and stuff, so all the salt in hers. And we started eating while waiting for a drink. And most of you have heard this story before, but I want to reinforce. We started waiting for a drink, and we started eating in the line, and she and I spoke at the same time. And I said, "Man, why you guys put some salt in the pot?" And she says, "Man, why they put no salt in the pot?"
She said I didn't put any.
And no, it's a question of how you become accustomed, your habituation, how much you're accustomed to tolerate and all the rest of it. Okay? And that is why they're asking us to get on to a certain level. And you talk about evidence-based. What have we seen in research? That's what evidence-based means. The practices that we see from the research, that is how we're going to implement new plans for our better health. The people in Argentina, if you ask any baker how much salt you put in a bag of flour, he can't tell you. He just throws salt in there.
Yeah,
He's accustomed. If I ask how much salt your grandmother used to put in her rice and peas on Sunday, some salt.
Yeah.
Okay, she put some salt. Right? I'm sorry, I'm having challenges with my charger here. Always plugged in. Right? Come on. So she put some salt. We don't have them kind of we don't have those kind of measurements, 1 cup, 2 cup, a teaspoon of salt or whatever it is. We put according to what we think. That's just us, okay? We don't have recipes per se. But the Argentinians, people buy a lot of bread. And what they did, they instead of having a big campaign to cut off salt, they went to the people who made bread, which everybody consumes. And they found a population, measured the populations had their blood pressures before, and asked them to. I'm having challenges with my charger. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Hope this is better. And ask bakers to cooperate and start decreasing the amount of salt you put in. Whatever you think you put in, start decreasing. And they decrease and they decrease. And they followed up the people, right? And the people had low blood pressures. But nobody complained that the bread tastes different, because they didn't even know that the bread the salt was being. So it proves to us that with slow decrease in salt, right? With a slow decrease in salt, you can actually have, you can achieve the flavor, because flavor is what you want. You can maintain the flavor, and it's not perceivable. People don't miss, imperceptible, right? In the same way, we're going to have to encourage our own populations to let's start cutting this down, because the challenge is not the things that already have salt, is adding salt to the pot. So if your mother cook and you don't think it have enough salt,
you put some more.
You add. You notice in restaurants you don't see salt and pepper shakers very much anymore. Yeah, and that's the reason why it's not there anymore, right? Because the evidence shows that the more salt we consume. I've seen other things that people have been saying recently. Oh, you need to have the salt. The evidence shows us that if you take too much salt, you're going to have high blood pressure. The salt tends to stay in the vascular on the walls, harden the walls, and so the blood that goes through, they go through under higher pressure. Yeah. And you have arterial hypertension. All right. So there is evidence over and over and over. But hear what? We're eating as much salt as our children. Right? Our children eat salt. They eat our meals. They eat our. With the same thing, when we go to eat, they buy the bags of like the cheesy corn curls, and so I don't want to use any brand names, but I'm gonna use corn curls in a generic names. Those corn flavored and potato chips and nacho chips and all of that, which have high quantities of salt, and that
sodium is high. Yeah.
Right? So we have to find a way to make sure that our children have foods. Our children have foods that have the right amount of salt, that we start discouraging them. It comes back to reading what's on the label. Turn in the back, the nutrition label, which we don't read. How much servings in a pack? How much salt in there? It says salt, sodium.
Sodium, right? Yes. Well, I was about,
right?
You would say
that's
sodium.
That's what's represented on the food packages.
Sodium.
So it says sodium. And it can also be not just a common salt, the sodium chloride. It could also be MSG, which when we buy Chinese flavored, and others like to season up and we did MSG, because it really heightens the flavor in what we're going to eat. But we have to be aware, and that everything adds up. Even when you drink a soda, why do you think you have soda? Have sodium in it, right? There's only one soda that I know of here that doesn't have sodium, but I'm not going to call them because nobody's allowed to have sodas as far as I'm concerned because of the sugar content. So, but the sad part is that we have also taught our children to tolerate these high levels of sodium. by giving them sugar-sweetened beverages that have salt as well for preservative, by giving them all these salty snacks to go to school. It's convenient, but it's not good. By the way we cook at home, when we go to the restaurant, everything has too much salt for the most part. And even if we cook a lot of salt, there are families that still add salt at the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we have to look at the products that have a lot of salt. What do you think our people consume that has a lot of salt?
You mean here in Grenada? Of course, I mean salt fish, salt meat, the pigtails, the pig snout, the salt beef, you name it.
Yeah, but I want us to say it because I want people to hear what it is.
Mm-hmm.
All those preserved meats that we put in our oil down. And the thing is, when you cook in oil, you put all of them in there.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, you buy rib tipped, pigtail, salt beef, pig snout, and then you still put a little salt fish and a little corn fish and a little corn pork, right?
Everything corn.
Why am I getting flavor? There's really too much salt. That the tinned meats or preserved meats, corned beef, sausages, and even we buy sausages. Well, we don't even talk about salami because you know how that tastes. Mm-hmm. Okay, sausages, cheese, bread, biscuits, crackers. Like I said, the snacks. Those are among the things that we use every day that have. You buy a sandwich. It has ham, cheese, salty bread, pickles that have salt. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. Mustard, ketchup, everything has added salt. So we have to be very careful what we put into our bodies because those are the salt that we can't measure. Mm-hmm. I can say, okay, this is what I'm cooking today. This is all the salt I'm going to use in my pot, right? But when you go out there and you buy food, you don't know what quantity has been put into your food. You don't know what quantity is in the sausage or the salami or the ham or the bacon or whatever, right? And so we have to be very cautious. Above all, we have to be very aware that this is where the chances are. Mm-hmm. Because we know that too much salt is not good for us. Is salt good for us? Yes, but within limits. We need it to keep our muscles, when you run and you
mm-hmm.
a lot, you get cramps. So your muscles, to make sure the muscle tone is maintained, that your heart keeps beating, all right? Especially for muscular activity, we have to make sure that we have enough salt. But we are not expected to have too much because long-term use of too much salt will definitely cause us to have elevated blood pressure, mm-hmm. which is one of the challenges that we have today.
Right, excellent. So Doc, let's look at, and we've established that yes, salt is good in specific quantities. But mm-hmm. because we are a people, we love the salty foods. How can we? So yes, we're not telling people to stop it saltfish or stop it whatever it is, but there are ways you can definitely reduce or significantly reduce the volume of salt in some of these foods.
That you consume,
yes,
right?
Let's talk about that. Mm.
Again, it's not the law, nor is it a habit that there must be an indication on the back of the package of the food. But we keep asking, Mrs. Brown has said it ad nauseum, we have to measure and we have to read what's at the back of our packages and limit and literally be aware as you go through the day how much of any nutrition product you're consuming. So the first thing you do is read your labels and get your family accustomed to understanding why this is not good. It's not good. Okay? The nutrition, the fact label and food packaging makes it easy to see exactly how much sodium has been added, right? In each food product that we buy. So get accustomed to reading the back of your labels. If we had, and we see it sometimes, if we had proper front of label packaging that we've been advocating for, which has not yet been accepted within CARICOM, if we had proper labeling at the front, remember we talked about the octagonal stop sign, the eight-sided black star sign, high in sugar, high in salt, high in fats, which are the three foods we'd look at. The truth is, if we had it, it'd be there to alert the consumer as he went into the supermarket. But people have to be aware, have to get accustomed to figuring out, boy, I mean, we buy Maggi soup, and then we still put the Maggi soup in a soup pot after we put in the corn pork, right, or the pigtail. And then we still put the Maggi soup to enhance the flavor. Yeah, and it enhances. It has a lot of things in there like MSG that will make it taste nice. And then we still put a little bouillon cube. All of those things are added salt, okay? And we have to know what is it I'm using here, and how is it going to affect my salt consumption. The other things, if we consume more of what we cook at home, because once we have an awareness and we produce food at home, it will be easier for us to be able to measure just how much salt to consume, because you have produced it, you have provided it. So instead of buying food in the supermarket and lunch on the street, you take your lunch from home. First of all, it costs a whole lot less, because the $25 you spend to buy food for yourself, you can do that and cook food for you and your family, right? And everybody go to work, go to school with some lunch. So cooking at home. And yes, take down the salt, but take it slow. Remove the salt from the table, right? Start cutting. The truth is, if I gave you callaloo soup without salt tomorrow, you're not going to eat it, right? But if I started cutting it down gently, that slow removal of the salt from your diet, right? The large volumes of salt, you may not recognize, as in the case of the Argentinians on the bread. Okay? Nobody recognized that the salt was being reduced. So slow reduction is very important. I know that people who have hypertension and say, well, I can't eat salt right now. Yeah, I want you to cut the salt down. I want you to cut the salt down for your whole family. Everybody in the family should be eating the same nutritious way. So it's not just for the person who has diabetes or hypertension. You're going to make changes. Okay? The changes that you're going to make are going to be for everybody. So going slow, cutting it down slow. The other thing is finding some alternatives. So I remember when we were looking at salt reduction from a CARICOM standpoint, we had gone to Canada. And the Canadians kind of lead on this, right? On the salt control. And remember, they have big industries. We don't have industries that provide food at that kind of level. We don't manufacture biscuits for export and, you understand? Tinned meats and sardines and corned beef. We don't have that kind of manufacturing, okay? So the Canadians, they do their cheeses, they have all the meats and stuff. And what they did was decrease as far as was safely from a food safety having food that's contaminated and stuff because you don't have enough salt for preservative. And they had gone down slowly, collaborated, like in Argentina, the Canadian producers, right? The Canadian producers actually collaborated with the Department of Public Health, right? And they cut the salt gently down to the point where it couldn't go anymore. That's a sodium chloride salt, okay? Cut it down. What I started to look for when it got it is look for other alternatives, because there are other alternatives. People will tell you they don't use salt, but they use green seasonings, and the food tastes just as it tastes nice, right? The food is highly seasoned, it tastes nice. They're looking at the use of potassium salts instead of sodium salts, right? But even that will have its side effect after a while, so you have to be very careful as to how much of the potassium salt you're going to use. I'm really having a challenge with my computer, and I don't want it to go off. All right. So finding alternatives is very important, right? Go through your spice cabinet and see how much what we have: chicken spice, adobo, fish seasoning, you understand? Mutton seasoning, there's also a different seasoning. Do these things contain salt?
They do.
So you're gonna season up some meat, right? Use all proper seasoning, and it's chicken, so I'm gonna put the chicken flavor in it, but that also has salt, right? I might still finger a little salt from the salt pot,
yeah,
right? And most of these things, onion salt, garlic salt, everything. When you finish, what you have is canned meat.
Yeah,
also
because
salt. I'm gonna finger a little sugar in the pot to decrease the sensation. Now, even if you decrease the taste of the salt, you have not removed the salt.
that's it. Yes.
So we have to consider that even if you do that, you really haven't removed the salt, and so it exists still. And you can't do this in a day because we're trying to build Rome here. It's going to take us a time. You know, it's never going to be absolutely perfect, but the trying is very important. And you get to a point where you can have a good balance between being well and have nice meals, cutting on your salt. Let the neighbor come and say, "Oh, there's not salt in this house?" And when he says, "Oh, of course the food has salt," because your family has become so accustomed to eating low salt, right, and eating the right amount of low salt that they don't have any challenges.
Yeah.
And of course, if you can avoid the snacks and the stuff that we buy, the tinned foods and stuff that we buy in the supermarkets, if we can avoid all of those, especially the snacks that we give to our children, it bothers me because our children consume so much salt in their snacks, in their little bag of snacks. It's frightening. If you open it, when you look at it, if you buy things like nachos and some of the corn curly thing, the ones that have a lot of residue in the bag, when you take it, you can corn meat for the whole family for the next month. It's just too much salt in the food, right?
Yeah, it does. You know, and interesting, Doc. So, for example, people who are hypertensive, once you start lowering your salt, you would see improvement in your blood pressure. It is. I mean, very, very, very obvious. Once you start doing that, you see improvement in your blood pressure. So it's very, very, very important that we pay attention to things like that. Now, okay.
So what can we eat if we're not eating the things with salt? Low salt vegetables, fresh vegetables, fresh food.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, they don't have the sauces, because those sauces nice, but they're nice because they're salt. Trust me, salt adds flavor. Low sodium canned vegetables and sauces and juices. Low sodium. If you feel you have to have it, look for something. If you have to buy it in the supermarket, look for low sodium. Fresh potatoes. If you're gonna have French fries, be frozen without salt, right? And stuff. But we cannot not eat that. So we can eat sweet potato fries. Fresh sweet potato, cut up a sweet potato and deep fry it, take it out fast, or fry it in what's the other thing? The air fryer.
The air fryer, yes.
Right? And have that. Low salt. There's some low salt juices like V8 juices and tomato juices, and you can make tomato juice at your house. If you have a surplus of tomato, because sometimes you just have a whole lot, buy the 10-pound tomato and make juice. It's so easy. It's not even funny. Right? And of course, if you have like dried fruits and dried nuts and stuff that don't have any salt, those are alternatives for snacks for our children and for ourselves.
Right. So I was just looking through some information from PAHO as it relates to how you can reduce your sodium intake. And some you mentioned, eat mostly fresh, minimally processed foods. Remove the salt shakers from the table. We spoke of that earlier because, of course, we have the tendency to shake in a little something, with our food.
If it's there, you're going to use it.
Definitely. Cook with little or no added sodium. Use herbs, spices, rather than salt. So herbs and so they have their own natural flavors, and of course they do bring out the flavors in the food as well. You can replace regular table salt with lower sodium salt substitute that contains potassium. And just as an aside, Doc, can you just quickly mention, because someone did ask earlier on our Facebook page about potassium and what it is, and I think it's important that we just share with them the importance of potassium in our diet.
Potassium is another what we call trace element.
Yeah.
Like sodium. That is part of your body. That is part of your body's the salts that's in your body that have the importance of potassium is keeping your heart pumping, especially if you have too much potassium. You can, if it potassium gets too high, it can actually make your heart beat out of rhythm and you can die. Okay, but that's what potassium really is.
It also helps to lower your blood pressure as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the sources of potassium, very important source of potassium, is ripe bananas.
Yeah, banana.
So sometimes some of us who take what you call it, diuretics, water pills if you already have hypertension, might find that we feel tired because some of the diuretics like the hydrochlorothiazide, the HCTZ, the one that's 12 or 25 milligrams, that would make you pass out of urine, but you also use a lot of salt. They're not what we call potassium sparing. So there are other diuretics like spironolactone that is potassium sparing. So, and has better effects like for cardiac protection and stuff. So if you're on spironolactone, you can ask your doctor to change you to, if you're on hydrochlorothiazide, HCTZ, if you're on that, you can always ask a doctor to change you so you don't lose so much potassium, because some people really get very, very, very tired because it takes, and of course, things like Lasix, if you're in heart failure, which also just goes in and literally hauls all the water out of your body, it also takes away a lot. It's not potassium sparing, as we say.
Yeah. So,
but sometimes Lasix, you just need to have that because it has its own major tasks that it performs. But you can, some people, your doctor actually needs to add potassium to your diet or to your medications, or he will ask you to eat foods that contain potassium. Usually one banana a day, ripe banana a day might do, but guess what? Sometimes you can't find ripe bananas, so your doctor might have to give you medications. So that's what potassium basically is. It's another thing that's important. And there's a balance between sodium and potassium in your body. So that's why you need to keep both of them within the normal limits, as you're going to have challenges.
Right. So I just wanted to, just as an aside. So I was just continuing. So they're also suggesting that we limit the use of commercial sauces, dressings, and instant products. Limit the consumption of processed foods. Choose foods with lower sodium content or low sodium products. And of course, what we've also spoken about, in front of pack warning labels. If it's available, choose the products that are labeled as high in or excess in, or that are not not
labeled such.
Yeah, and a couple of other things. For example, the foods that we enjoy, like the salt fish and the salt pork, and so we can soak it, we can boil it to remove a significant amount of the sodium in there.
Content, right.
Before we consume it. So these are just some of the things you can do.
So
to
one of the things I want, and we kind of need to look at our own colloquial lifestyles, okay? How we live, what's cultural about us. You remember when you were a little child, right? And it didn't have, when I was a little child, because I don't know how old you are, you had curry and black pepper in the packet. That's what you get in the shop, right? And you get ketchup. Not very much, but you get ketchup. And buy a bottle of ketchup, you take a little spoonful and put in the pot to make it look a little reddish, okay? No, if you're gonna make it, if they're making fish gravy, they put a little ketchup in there. If we look at the people who do foods, those culinary shows on TV, from which we tend to gather a lot of our examples, they come and they take something and they sprinkle this one and they sprinkle that and they sprinkle that and they turn it over and they put it in the oven. But don't you remember your mother Sonia and buy chive and thyme and celery and all the and the big thyme and everything, and then the meat seasoned on Saturday evening for Sunday or on Friday night if you're Adventist, season up the meat and put it in wherever you put it, right? Season it good and you cover it down so the cat not go and take it, but you put it in the fridge in the night and make it marinade. How many of us do that?
I do. I do.
You do?
Oh yeah.
Well, but you still put salt, don't? You still put all the seasonings, or use fresh green seasonings?
No. We use a lot of dry seasonings. Well, local herbs.
But just a pure seasoning.
Yes. Like the basil and all of these things. Yeah.
You know basil again?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. But seriously, we have to get back to that. Cause those things not hard to go. I have basil going on my window in my kitchen. Right? And what you call it? Shadow bene.
Oh yes, well that one, I mean that grows everywhere. This is
right. You could go in the yard and pick out some.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that we have to get back to those traditional behaviors where we don't have the need to use food that's seasonal foods quickly. And obviously the salt is one of the things that we want getting in there so that our food tastes better. We have to get back to traditional practices. You can't take it in the morning, fling like a season on it, fling it over, flip it over twice like you see on TV. And then you put it in the oven or you put it in wherever you're putting it, and your air fryer, I don't know, whatever you use to cook your meats and stuff, right? And even the things we do, when do we need to start measuring how much flour, how much salt do I put into each pound of flour when I'm making my bread, my bakes, my dumpling. Whatever I put, I need to decrease it. And I'm saying, I tell my patients, but I have to cut down the salt. Yes, we need to cut down salt. No, you don't have to eat fresh food. I tell my patients up front, you don't have to eat food that, when I say fresh, saltless food, right? Start cutting it down gently. Do it for everybody. By the time they realize it's missing, they get accustomed to it at that level. Cut it a little more. Okay? Cut it a little more until it reaches a point where, okay. I'm not having just water and chicken here. Do you understand? But cut down the salt because we know, like you say, evidence has shown us that consuming too much salt in our diet does cause us to have, among other things, elevated blood pressure. What do you think happens when we consume too much salt, though? What are the symptoms we may have? So, among those symptoms includes bloating, because you have so much salt on your body keeps water to keep the balance, okay? You get very thirsty if you consume too much salt. What when you give a dog human food? He goes and drinks a lot more water because it has more salt than he normally should consume as a dog. All right? You want to go to the bathroom because your kidney tries to eliminate the surplus of salt, as you're speaking, right? Your blood pressure goes up, of course. We talk about edema, swelling around your legs and stuff. You get headaches because your blood vessels get hardened and your pressure might go up. And can feel very tired, and you may even have palpitations if you break that sodium-potassium balance. So those are some of the symptoms that we see, okay, when we have high sodium in our diet. In the last 2 years, there's been a campaign, and we talked about it recently, for front of package one label. And it has to come because the approach to eliminating salt is going to have to be multifaceted. Apart from us having policy where the government says, look, front of package one label is going to be something, we have to educate our population. We have to remind them that hypertension is there. The population must participate and say, I don't want this to have too much salt. Right? People must know. People must understand, how do I feed my family? The Ministry of Agriculture has to make sure that there are policies that allow us to grow what we need to eat. We must have access to fresh foods, fresh fish, right? All of those things must be, you must have situations put into place so that people can eat healthily. But above all, people have to seek out information as well so that they know what is good and what is not good for themselves.
Indeed. So, Doc, I tell you what, just before we go, I want to take a short break, but before we do that, of course, PAHO, they do have some interventions that they've suggested, and let me just share. So, the reduction of salt or sodium consumption is one of the most cost-effective interventions to prevent hypertension and CVDs. And these interventions, they include one, We formulate food products to contain less salt and set target levels for the amount of salt in foods and meals in a mandatory fashion.
So I want us to talk about reformulation when we come back.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the arguments that the food industry, I talk about big manufacturers, are using against the pressure to reduce salt. So when we come back, we can talk about that. Go ahead.
Right. Also establish a supportive environment in public institutions such as hospitals, schools, workplaces, and nursing homes to enable the provision of lower sodium options. Also, behavior change, communication, and mass media campaigns through social marketing to raise awareness on salt consumption and reduction, like what we're doing now, of course. Implementation of standards for front of pack labeling and marketing restrictions. I mean, we've talked about that.
And those are the multifaceted interventions that are necessary to support our community, to support our countries to living a better lifestyle, especially as far as salt goes.
Right. And then finally, surveillance. So measure sodium population intake, sodium food content, and sodium dietary sources. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we can probably look at them in a little more detail and, before we move on, or if we have time to move on to the other things. So stay with us, folks. We take a short break and we will be right back with you. Don't go anywhere.
Drug abuse, cancer,
measles, diabetes, AIDS, cancer. Have you heard about the new Softweave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Softweave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue. Available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Softweave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
GBN presents the 2025 Maggie King of the Grill, Saturday, June 7th, Mon Rouge Plainfield from 11 a.m. Our partners, Maggie, the secret of great flavor, Grenada Distillers Limited, makers of Clark's Court, Grenada's #1 rum, Grenada Paper Products, makers of Cherish, Spring Soft, Harbour Bay, and Super Value Toilet Paper, and Royal, Quick and Easy, and Horizon Paper Towels, Budget Foods Inc., Classic Lighting, and Blue Bubbles PA Rental and Event Supplies. It's the 2025 Maggie King of the Grill, where flavor rules.
Welcome to the live Super 6 Draw presentation for this evening, Tuesday, the 13th of May, 2025. I am your hostess, Kijan Smith. Super 6 is a multi-jurisdictional game owned by Winlot Inc. and is played within the islands of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dominica, Grenada, and St. Lucia. Tonight's jackpot is valued at $280,000. We'll now get ready to select your free ticket letter. Good luck. Your letter is E. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back with tonight's winning numbers.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
Now you love Super 6 even more. With more money.
The jackpot galore. Play more, win more, have more fun. With more jackpot money.
Super 6 is my number one.
With the new and improved Super 6 team, the jackpot keep growing and growing.
I'm growing.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game. Super 6, bigger jackpots, more chances to win.
Great news about Super 6. You can play Super 6 combo bets to increase your chances at winning the Super 6 jackpot. Here's how. The combo 5 betting option costs $69. Players have a choice of any 5 numbers, and if you match 5 of the 6 numbers, you win the jackpot. Maybe you prefer combo 7, costing $21. With a choice of 7 numbers, and if you match any 6 numbers out of the 7 numbers, you win the jackpot. How about combo 8? This option costs $84. Players select 8 numbers, and if you match any 6 numbers out of the 8 numbers, you win the jackpot. All numbers chosen should be from a range of 1 to 28. Play combo bets. Remember, with Super 6, there are bigger jackpots and more chances to win.
Welcome back. Get ready for your Super 6 winning numbers. Good luck. To recap, your Super 6 winning numbers are 24, 16, 26, 2, 8, and 27. Your free ticket letter is E. Tonight's winning numbers were drawn under the supervision of an auditor from BDO. Please contact your relevant Central Lottery office for further information on the payment of prizes. Thank you all for playing responsibly, and remember, with Super 6, there are bigger jackpots and more chances to win. Our next Super 6 draw takes place on Friday, the 16th of May, 2025. Until then, have yourself a wonderful evening.
Drug abuse.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Doctor on Call. In case you joined us late, Dr. Nixon is with us, and we are looking at World Salt Awareness Week, 12th to the 18th. Yeah, and so we're chatting tonight about the importance of lowering your consumption of salt or sodium. Before the break, we spoke about the interventions which are cost effective, and the first one we mentioned or we shared with you was reformulating food products. Doc, and you wanted to share a bit of information on that.
So already mentioned reformulation. We spoke of the Argentinians changing how they bake, how much salt they add. We spoke of the and that was collaborative, because you can implement laws, and say a loaf of bread, making bread is not supposed to have more than 10 grams of salt per loaf. I'm just saying, okay? But what I did was collaborate. You can say in a tin of luncheon meat, you can't have more than 25 grams of salt per pound. Okay? I'm just saying. I don't know what the numbers are. What the Canadians and Argentinians and other countries where they've had Brits they've all had collaboration with manufacturing. We do not have that level of manufacturing. Most of what we eat are brought in here by distributors. So we have the supermarkets and the bigger distributors. We have Hubbards and Hoggins and the people that import stuff, right? And distribute it to a population. So they don't have much control over it. But if we say we don't want it, we will get their support. If the population says, no, thank you, this have too much salt, that have too much salt, I'm not buying it, right? What is happening is that one of the suggestions to most of large manufacturers, and we have big manufacturers in the Caribbean. We have Grace Kennedy, we have companies in Barbados, although they do a lot of drinks, but they do biscuits and stuff as well. We have Trinidad has a big manufacturing sector. Jamaica has a big manufacturing sector, and other places in the Caribbean. I was in Puerto Rico, but Puerto Rico still belongs to America, although they fall within the Caribbean. Remember that our low and middle income countries are the ones who bear the greatest burden of these chronic diseases related to poor dietary practices. So we see our population with a high incidence of hypertension and having strokes and heart attacks and kidney failure as a result, okay? It is therefore important that we go to the source. A lot of manufacturers will tell you, it's going to cost them so much to reformulate, to make it new, make it different, because we did so much research, blah, blah, blah. We did a lot of research so we can get this perfect taste. And if we change the flavor, the consumer is not going to want it. But like I said, the people in Argentina never realized that you change the flavor in the bread. In the bread, right? So it's a question of that will that manufacturers have. And we as consumers are the ones who control that will. Their biggest problem is that it costs them to reformulate, but it also costs them to repackage because they have to change what's printed at the back. But like the kids say, because guess what? When Christmas comes, don't they put other nice thing on the packages that they want to sell? Don't they package it differently when they have anniversaries? So there is that. There has been a big manufacturing war, okay? Right? What we call big food, big manufacturers who really have. I've been to fora where they brought their lawyers, right? Stating that they were threatening their life, their well-being and stuff. But guess what? It's going to have to change, and I can tell you that it's changing because there are products I buy, and I know that they have been changing their formula without saying it loudly, because it's going to have to happen. Because there is going to come a time where consumers are going to determine that, hey, my health matters. And when they go to the store, they're going to want to say, I buy this thing the other day and it's not so salty, right? I buy John Doe corned beef and it don't taste so salty. Or I buy X pizza, frozen pizza, it don't taste so salty. Because already they have started reformulating. For me, that's a good thing. Right? But the war continues. But I'm saying to people that we are the ones who determine what people sell. Because if you don't buy them, can't sell it.
That's true.
Okay. If you don't buy it, and I said to those guys, guys, I can't figure out why manufacturers are fighting against consumers. Dead consumers do not shop. Dead consumers buy nothing. Okay, so as consumers, I want us to take on the responsibility of protecting our health and supporting the need to have manufacturers make way, right? Make way for us to be able to support them, but while they provide products that are safe. Because currently, those products with so much salt are unsafe for our consumption. And we know that. And they know that. We have to decide, no, thank you. And if the product stays on the shelf, they will stay. There's a challenge with a lot of countries. Sometimes we get all this cheap stuff, and they just dump it because they cannot sell it because there is policy in the countries where these things are already made, and they can't be sold on the market. So they send it to these low income and middle income countries, the poorer people in the world, and we buy it because, oh my God, this spaghetti sauce or spaghetti is cheap, eh? And the only reason why is because they're dumped. They have no use to where they come from. So we have to be very cautious and always take the package and read the back and see what the salt consumption, what the salt content is. This is talking about salt. The other thing that they look at for trans fats and too much sugar. But we have to take on our responsibility as consumers to ensure that we support the public health agencies that fight for us to get better quality products. Right? We have to support the agencies that are in the struggle to ensure that manufacturers is their business, and they're in the business because it can make money, but it can make money by giving us good products as well. So that is why we have to be advocates for ourselves and support the people who are advocating out there on a wider level to ensure that we have good products for our well-being.
Yeah, very, very, very important, and I have to agree. If we in local terms, we're giving them bad habit because we're consuming all of these things that are sent here. Yeah, yes, indeed. Yeah. So, folks, we have to pay attention. It is always better to do what you need to do now than later on to be trying to run here and run there and find a cure and expect the physicians to work miracles for us. We have to think about that, think ahead, because we know what can happen. We know what can definitely happen. Doc, another one, establish a supportive environment in public institutions. I think that is very, very critical, such as hospitals, schools, workplaces, and nursing homes, to enable the provision of lower sodium options. Yes, schools are there. In fact, schools is the second one. Hospitals, schools, workplaces, and the nursing homes.
So these are mostly institutions that are umbrellaed by the government, right?
Yeah.
And the government makes policy, the government makes decision. The health sector is part of government's work towards keeping people healthy. We really should have standards of how we produce foods in our hospitals, in our schools. We still having a challenge. We talk about sugar. We talk about sugar so far. Well, no, in schools we really look at healthy nutritious policy, healthy nutrition in school in general. So the salt does come in, right? And the snacks that we give and all the rest. That is why there must be policies that are applied at all of those levels. Institutions like the jail, why you're going to give middle-aged men high sugar, high salty food? I'm serious, right? And middle-aged men who are at His Majesty's, are guests of His Majesty, yet our budget have to feed them and take them to hospital and all the rest of it. I'm saying that's a good place to start. Okay? Mm-hmm. I'm to New York the other day and I went to this lady who's in rehab. She had a malignancy, but she was in rehab. And she got, Lord, I want to tell you, some mashed potato, something with some meat, right? With some meat that looked like it make out of paper and you put color on it. Right? Not like paper and fat and you put color on it. And then they gave her a big chunk of chocolate cake, a loaf, two little rolls in a packet, another thing, and just constant. And this is a lady who's in her late 80s. I don't know if she's hypertensive or other, but that's how they're feeding her in a nursing home. Even the vegetables were in a briny, sugary fluid. You understand?
Here in Grenada?
Right?
Oh.
No, in the US.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Mhm.
So they just stack everything on top of the tray, right? And the food, and she refused to eat it. She says, "Oh, let's take out like the things that are like a package. Take it." We don't even eat those things, right? She said, "Take it, just take it and go on." It's a shame because all of this goes back into the garbage, and it means that healthcare becomes much more expensive than you really want it to be. Okay? Healthcare becomes much more expensive than you want it to be, while your patient doesn't really get well. It is important that we provide food so people who are not in a position to provide their own food because they're institutionalized, right? Like I said, whether they're incarcerated or in a hospital or even in school. But that is a good place to start, to start being exemplary and provide foods that are healthy. And healthy foods don't have to taste bad. Okay? Healthy foods don't have to taste bad. I also think that agencies like the church, where we have large volumes of people that participate, must be on the bandwagon to speak of us consuming less salt. The Adventist Church has a good health program, and I know they speak to the population, but all the churches have to come on board. People go to church every week, and it's a place where people believe what they hear. We have a responsibility to use those platforms. Yeah, we use platforms like this to remind people of the things. We use platforms like GIS and other services, right? There are just so many ways. We have 110,000 people. We can get information across. We have to educate our children in particular, because once you educate them, it's not going to happen. I can tell you. They don't want this. And I've heard children complain bitterly when we were doing the childhood obesity policy and they were part of it. They were the ones who guided how that policy was developed, because they will tell you what they don't want and they will tell you what the options were that could be applied, healthy options were that could be applied for their well-being. Okay? So if we start by teaching our children how to eat properly, we'll have generational practice and spread of good habits, and we'll have less chronic diseases.
Yes, indeed. Doc, you mentioned something, and just before we continue, and I think we mentioned it earlier as one of the dangers of salt, obesity, and you mentioned it. Take a minute and just explain to us how salt or salt intake can contribute to obesity.
Because when we consume salt, we eat a lot of food because we like it. We eat a lot of the stuff that we eat, right? Have usually like carbohydrate products. And it's almost like an addiction to the salt. So you consume a whole lot more. And what you do, you eat products that you don't need, you eat in surplus, and it contributes to obesity because of the volumes that we consume.
Right. So,
yeah, but how much, and I ask you that question every time. When you go to oil long party, how much oil long you eat?
Me? I cook my own oil long.
All right. So when you serve yourself some oil, tell me the quantities you put on your bowl. You cook breadfruit, you cook green fig, yam, dasheen, and the green thing on top.
I eat 4 dumplings, 2 pieces of breadfruit, and a lot of meat.
So first of all, 4 dumplings alone is a whole meal, okay?
No, but them dumplings.
So that is what
but Doc, it's
because
baby dumpling.
Salt,
No, but
you eat the salt is not.
But it's baby dumpling. Baby dumpling.
And I know it's not like a dumpling like that. Like
yes, it's baby dumpling. I don't make adult dumplings.
But the truth is, someone make some big walking stick dumpling, okay? And we put 2 and 3 on a plate. I'm serious.
No, it's true. It's true. No, definitely. It's true. It is true. I mean,
yeah. And despite the amount of salt we put in the pot, right? Where the salt meat and stuff, and the ketchup and all the things that you put in it, right? You still put salt in the flour to make a dumpling, don't you?
I don't, and that's something I stopped doing years.
Generally, we do.
Yes,
I'm saying
yes,
that's unnecessary.
Yes, indeed. Mm-hmm. Indeed. So there's a lot of added salt. I mean, if we just do the normal, which might still be a little too much, but if you, for example, you avoid salt in the flour for the dumplings and things like that, because food like bananas and so they come with their own natural sodium, so we really don't need to use more of that.
I'll tell you that. I eat lettuce and the lettuce tastes salty. I eat eggs and the eggs do have salt. You can taste the salt in the eggs, right?
And there are people who sprinkle a little table salt on the eggs.
I know. Mm-hmm. But eggs to me are salty enough for me, right? So, and again, look, guess what? Everybody's not going to have the same kind of palate, but we still have to be very aware that there are limitations within which we must stay in order to remain healthy. And this whole Salt Awareness Week is just awareness. It's for us to remember, it's to remind us that we have to change mindsets and we have to change behaviors in order so we can be well. We consume too much salt.
Indeed.
A young man told me he went to a certain place by a street vendor who sells food, who is very well supported. And when he got the food, he says, "Oh my God, this food has so much salt." He says, "How you eat this?" She says, "I don't eat that." That's what the consumers want. I don't put that kind of salt in my food. So there's a consciousness that has to be brought up, because at the end of the day, we're all responsible, whether we're providing, right? And that is why you have calls for policy and rules as to how you're gonna implement those requirements, because as you say, the evidence is there to prove that if you consume a lot of salt, you're going to have challenges with high blood pressure.
Right. No, definitely. So Doc, as part of the salt awareness, there's a document. Are we ready for meals for a change? A call for stronger nutritional policies. And here's a couple very interesting suggestions and the government recommendations. Not Grenada, but and one says revitalize the National Salt Reduction Program as a public health priority. And I know you're big on public health.
There is a CARICOM salt reduction program policy.
Right.
That's one of the things I worked on. There's a plan that we have started with manufacturers, but you also have to go to the education, right? Not all countries have adopted it, but there is a CARICOM salt reduction plan.
But it's important. Maybe we need to inquire about if we do have one here.
No, it's one CARICOM thing.
Right. Okay.
It's just implementation.
So we need to definitely. So it says basically the government must reestablish salt reduction as a core pillar of its strategy to improve population health, recognizing the strong link between high salt consumption and increased risk of hypertension, stroke, and heart disease. This includes showing strong leadership, increased resources, and cross-departmental collaboration to drive salt reduction across the food industry.
And that is what I told you. We have to have stronger policies at the Ministry of Finance that decide policy, no importation of foods, right? Or higher taxation on foods that have higher salt, right? I'm just saying, as an example, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, so don't misquote me, right? Ministry of Finance must understand what can we tax, right? That's a method, By taxation, people buy less, it costs more.
Yeah.
So we almost couldn't buy food from China when they took the tariff up to 130%.
In fact, one of them is consider fiscal levers on healthy foods.
Yeah, and consider good fiscal favor
on
healthy foods.
Yes.
The foods that are healthy.
Yes.
Right? So so we talked about Ministry of Agriculture, training families, having policies where they give plans, encouraging more production. All of those things are part of it. Ministry of Health has its role to play. Ministry of Sports has its role to. Everybody has a role to play. Okay, and that is what the interdepartment, the thing across the board. Health in all policies have to come to the fore, where they recognize here's a health policy that's going to decrease our health statistics by X amount of percent over Y years. What is my role? So trade is taxation of products for the most part, right? They can do so. Agriculture encourages us to have more natural foods. Fisheries, we can make sure that our population have more access to fresh fish, so we don't have to buy tin mackerel, which I know that once they drop the mackerel in the mackerel dead, once you put it in the salt, because there's just so much salt, they're not accustomed to so much, right? But what I'm saying, we have to remember that all parties must have policies or must engage their health policies, right, to support whatever that major health policy is. They must be multifaceted and multi-departmental.
Indeed, and of course, develop a long-term salt reduction plan with mandatory targets. I like that.
Yeah,
so there's work to be done.
Targets that World Health that PAHO/WHO. PAHO is just the regional part of WHO that they already have. But it's the implementation of all the policies and changing how we feed our population, how our population sees their food as being healthy, how they're going to participate. And it's going to take, like you said, a lot of education, a lot of interventions, whether it's from an institutional standpoint or just talking like this so people hear it on the radio, or they see it on TV. We are going to have to use whatever means, social marketing, whatever we can do, how we can motivate our population to see salt in a negative way after a certain amount of consumption.
Right.
Because remember, you have to have a little bit of salt in your food.
Oh, yes, indeed. But also for there are some food industry recommendations. One, adopt front of pack color-coded labeling on all food and drink.
Well, that's from the package one labels.
Yes, of course, yeah. Commit to reformulation targets for salt and calories.
Well, we just talked about
yes,
that. Yeah.
And then there's I think a very important one, which probably policies can help there. Increase availability and visibility of healthier ready meal options.
It's funny because when we had a consultation on salt here, right? One supermarket manager says he knows exactly how to do this. What would you do? Oh no, we make sure we have a corner in the supermarket area where we say here are low sodium products. So I will still go down there to shop, knowing that I will get my low sodium products there, while I buy my vegetable and fruit and ice cream and other things I probably think I need to buy. Okay? But he will promote. So he's not going out of business because what he's doing is collaborating. It's not that he doesn't have other high salt products, but just a corner says, hey, here's a corner with all my low sodium products. And as he sells more, he brings in more.
Right? Uh-huh.
His whole distribution pattern changes, right? His sourcing changes because people are now becoming informed. When I go to the supermarket, my supermarket manager has already seen to it that I can access healthy foods for my well-being, and that is how it comes into. So distributors don't have to. We're not putting them out of business. We're just making a business better because, like I said, dead people don't shop.
No, definitely, indeed. It is such an important thing because, Doc, as a physician, you come across lots of people. I don't know if you'll be able to give me an exact thing, but in terms of the ratio of people who come to you who are hypertensive, what's it like?
So I have a young population, and then I have an older population.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my older population has hypertension and diabetes. We know that people who have diabetes are very, very, very likely to have hypertension. So I look out for it. Mm-hmm. But I still have a middle-aged population that also has hypertension. and we go through the discussion. What is good for you? What is not good for you? Right? How you take control over this? How you choose what you buy? What is not good for you? You can't eat tinned meats. Got that too much salt, right? If you're gonna eat pig snout, soak it, boil it. Whatever you have to do. You want piece of pig snout in your soup, or piece of rib tips, whatever they have. You're gonna have to take out all that salt because it's just not good for you. You like salty sauce? I'm sorry, I like salty sauce, but I don't want salty sauce. Right? Sometimes I'm embarrassed because the salty sauce is no longer salt, it's just fish sauce.
It's just fish. But nothing wrong with that. I think it's
but seriously,
nothing. But if you if it's done, yeah, but that's the thing. If it's done well, and you use fresh vegetables, it's probably even tastier.
But let me tell you something. Sometimes I have to back a little salt in there, okay, to make it taste. I'm telling you, because I take out all the salt, right? And I boil I cook my salt and my vegetables in a steamer.
Right.
So the saltfish down on the bottom and the steam,
everything, yes.
The on top, right? Right? And I make sure it cook. And I keep the saltfish in there until my vegetables cook, my provisions and stuff cook. And then there's no salt. Because sometimes you soak the saltfish before anyway.
Yeah.
And put it in, I'm like, oh my God, Sonia, this is ridiculous. But, because I know I do it. And it gets so bad, because I don't consume a lot of salt, it gets so bad that there are times when I have to have salt. I get a half an orange and put a little salt because I need, my body's craving salt. I also can't afford to not consume the amount of salt that's required for my heart to tick properly, for my muscles to be able to contract, right? Because there has to be a balance. That is what it's all about. It has to be a balance.
Right. Wonderful.
So I want people to, what I beg you to tonight, think about this, okay? Think about the fact that too much salt is not good for you. Think about the fact that why food are salty is because we use salt to preserve, but salt for flavor. And we've gotten accustomed to having more and more and more and more salt. Even if you buy ice cream, you have salt in there. Okay, everything has salt. Everything, almost every product you eat has sodium in there to enhance the flavor and to preserve it. Okay? Or if it's just a savory dish, then they put salt in there. So be very careful, right? We buy a lot of food outside. Just remember that responsibility to yourself is you. It must be you, right? And so, and it's a cultural norm for us to eat a lot of salt. So we do. We shouldn't do so. And we say, so we do because some of we salt. No, and eating. When you're drinking rum, we having some.
Yes.
No, doesn't really matter. That's putting weight on queen sugar because you're already drinking rum, which you're not supposed to be drinking, and you're taking salt, too much salt, which you're not supposed to be taking. So we take smoke herring, right? Because some people just roast the smoke herring, throw a little rum on it.
Yeah,
I don't know if you see that. I grew up in shops, so I see them men throw a little rum on it and they catch it afire and then they take it and they eat it with crackers.
Yeah.
I have also seen the cracker that we tend to eat a lot here. Because I don't normally buy it because I always thought it was too salty, and the other day there was nothing else in the store, and I bought it. I'm like, they have reduced the salt. So I can tell you, big manufacturers are
reformulating.
Reformulating their. I don't know where I get reformer from. Reformulating their menus to suit what our real needs are. So if we pressure them a little, they will change.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right because culturally, we had two types of biscuits, sweet biscuit and salt biscuit. That's how it used to be called. In fact, I recall there was a little joke about that. There was a little boy who was in school and the teacher asked him to spell biscuit and he wrote BISKIT and the teacher said no. And he said, teacher, no, I'm right, because you did not tell me which one, if it is salt or sweet. So I'm just, so culturally, it used to be called, salt and sweet. So you're right. Yes,
yeah.
Has been reduced, definitely.
So I want people to remember, it's always at the end, the buck stops with you as an individual.
Indeed.
So we've given you a lot of food for thought tonight, but we noticed we're not putting no salt in the food. I want you to work on it. I'm not telling you to eat food tomorrow that don't have no salt. I'm saying cut it down less and less. And the day you put too much in there, you say, my goodness, what did I do? Who threw all the salt in the pot?
In fact, Doc, we can
accustomed it. It's something you get accustomed to, and you get accustomed to it very quickly and very easily.
Yeah.
Because you're hypertensive and nobody else in your family has hypertension does not mean that you have to have a different pot. If you do not want to have salt in your food, that's fine. Any salt. Let's say you cook provisions or you cook soup. You take out your bowl of soup and you add salt at the end of the cooking for the people who want. But you also make sure you add measured amounts of salt, less than you would normally give them, because we have to get to a point where salt is not that, is recognized as not absolutely necessary.
Right.
We need a small amount for well-being, but we don't need a whole salt pan in your pot on one day.
Right. Doc, we have the phone line going. Let's take a quick call. We have a caller on the line. Doctor and call, good evening.
Well, thank you very much, and pleasant good evening. And to the doctor, I just want to say, well, thanks for your refresher course. I know I've been suffering with diabetes for over 40 years now. And, I'm doing well, but although at the same time, I got burned in 2019 and I quit it, and that's because of the diabetes and whatnot. Gangrene stepped in almost in a sort of a timing, and so I'm on-footed at this time. But I want to say thanks one more time, for your refresher course, because Dr. Jensen Northway, and frankly speaking, I should be taking 10 tablets daily. But personally speaking, between you and I try to plant my own seasoning and use my own seasoning, so I probably managed to boil it down to probably about just 2. Not even in plumbing, sometimes I take, and I'm doing very well. My last son is 15 years. My first daughter is 50 years. And I'm 70 years now. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you very much indeed. Excellent. Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the vocals of
So first he said thanks for the refresher course. He's diabetic, and he said very, very interestingly that he should be using 10 tablets daily, but he's been able to get his fresh seasonings and stuff like that, and he has now reduced it to 2 tablets. He's 70, so very interesting. Congratulations, caller. Continue doing what you're doing.
And that's evidence that if we treat ourselves well, we may not need medications because we can control our diseases.
Yes.
People think they heal and they do all the foolishness. No. You already have a breakdown in a system. You can control it by what you consume, by your lifestyle. It doesn't necessarily go away from your being. So thank you to this caller for reminding us that.
Yes.
I wanted to talk, however, 2 minutes about road safety, because I think it's very important.
Mm-hmm.
This is Road Safety Week, right?
So Doc, just let's just take a quick call before we. Doctor and call. Good evening. Hello. Good evening, caller. Hello.
Hi, good night.
Yes,
I thought I was disconnected there.
No.
Very, very useful program. I understand that I'm hearing everything about the legislation and those what the government can do and the regulation and so. But at the end of the day, you can legislate common sense. And some people, I don't know. I learned from primary school, and it stuck with me, that you add salt to make the food palatable, meaning that you put just enough to give the food some kind of taste, but you're not supposed to taste the salt. It's something I say to folks all the time. Once you taste salt, you have too much salt. Similarly, for drinks, if you taste sugar, it is too sweet. So these are supposed to enable you to enjoy the thing. But the moment you start tasting them, it means that you're putting too much of them, because you're not eating salt. You're eating fish or chicken or whatever you're eating, not salt. So once you're tasting it, more than you're tasting whatever it's on, then you have too much of it.
Too much, yeah. All right.
To me, that is a simple rule of thumb.
Right.
They follow.
Excellent. Thank you for that, caller. Thank you very much indeed. Yes.
So I heard some of what he said.
Mm-hmm.
So we have people who need to advocate in the community. These are discussions people should be having with each other. You know, you and your friends sit down to talk about these things, because you'd be surprised. You don't have to go into the kitchen, in a manner of speaking, okay? But you can talk about these things. You know, I was watching this program, and this is what I said. You know what I've heard? This is what I learned. We have to share information, because not everybody watches this program. Not everybody listens to GIS. Not everybody goes to the health center. But we all interact with each other at some point. And those are the conversations you should be having instead of gossiping and being malignant with each other. How can we say well? You know, community men's group in the church, women's organization, Legion of Mary, give us 5 minutes for well-being. This is what, and you know, so in Sunday school, talk about all these things, because the population needs to have information, and information must come from any healthy source. Mm-hmm. Okay? And the conversations must be had among people. God be sit down and say, boy, that's too much salt. Here's what I understand. This is how you can learn. How is your pressure? Have you taken your medication? Do you want to be on medication all the time, or you want to be able to control your blood pressure by how you eat and exercise and lose weight and all the rest of it? Those are the things we have to engage in our community. We get into a bigger place, and those are the kind of conversations that our citizens, all of us, need to engage in, right? And if you don't have information, ask somebody who might have a little more information than you to come and chat with you.
Yes, indeed. You know, Doc, I know we wanted to talk about a little bit about road safety. We may have to use it for another program, because we actually totally out of time. But just to say that, folks, and maybe, Doc, you could just take maybe 2 minutes just to sort of, and then we can go look at it in an entire program, because I think there's a lot we can talk about as it relates.
The road safety thing?
Yes, just briefly.
So the World Health Organization has taken on road safety as a big task, where you have 1.2 million people dying on the road each year. Mm-hmm. Not us Grenadians luckier than anybody else, because I've seen quite a few vehicles every year, or a lot of weekends with a foot up in the air, and people don't die. God be praised. But we have to look at road traffic accidents from a health standpoint. If people are going to die or people are going to be maimed, it's going to affect their lives and the lives of their family and their well-being, okay? And whichever social group they find themselves into, all right? That you can extend. The truth is that between 20 and 500 million, between 20 and 50 million people every year with non-fatal injuries. So 1.2 million die, but you have another 20 to 50 million who have some form of injuries. And that would come from a scrape to paraplegia, you understand? Severe burns, loss of limb, whatever it is, right? More than half of all road traffic accident deaths occur among vulnerable road users, such as pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists. So we don't have a lot of cyclists and motorcyclists in our country. So you're looking at countries like India and those countries, Indonesia, the Far East, where people ride out a bike, right? There's a lot, and even South America and stuff, right? But the point is, I see there are some pedestrians here who think they have headlight, who walk across my car like I owe them, I have to stop because my light says red, and they're walking across. I see pedestrians who will not use the pedestrian crossing in front of the bus park.
Yeah. And they would walk just, the pedestrian crossing is right here. They choose not to use it, but they use...
on the pedestrian crossing.
You know,
I
Doc...
see vendors on the sidewalk who do not leave space for pedestrians to be able to walk in a safe space.
You know, Doc, interestingly...
Vendors who cost me because I can't merge into the bigger road because they're selling in the road and I can't see, and I put pedestrians at risk. The truth is, this is a responsibility for all of us. In the past, we used to look at the quality of the road, the quality of the car. I mean, these days, most of our cars are relatively well because we have very modern vehicles for the most part. Some people don't take very good care of vehicles, but most of the vehicles are well. Our challenge, however, in Grenada lies, and it's all human. Some of us don't fix our car, yes, but we drive too fast and we drive under the influence, especially not knowing the road code. There is a thing called a road code that every driver has the responsibility to know, like the back of your hand. Mm-hmm. Nobody has right of way, even when you think you do. I've had to give my right of way to a mother who crosses in front of me, in front of the bus park with her 9-year-old and her little 2-year-old. And I ask her if she's teaching her children how to kill themselves on the road. Because that's what you do. You give them these subliminal messages. If you don't cross, if you don't wait for the lights to change, right? We have been blessed that we don't have a lot of road fatalities, but there are a lot of road accidents. Yep. When you have an accident, it costs the police, it costs the government to come and do all the testing. Police could be doing more meaningful things than coming out to measure, and the judge in the court spend time because you have an accident and you think the guy should pay you because he hit your car, even if you know your car never had no brakes. We have to become responsible road users. Why do we have the road? We have the road for economic purposes, for social purposes. I want to get to work. I want to go to the beach. I want to go to church. You want to go to Sunday school. You want to take your children to a party, whatever it is. That's what the road, that's what the traffic is, the transit is there for. So we have to see it as a gift that we're going to preserve. And because there's a risk of us becoming maimed, injured, or dying on the road, we have to practice responsible use of the road. And it's not only the responsibility of drivers. Our pedestrians have a big responsibility in learning how to cross the street, how to walk on the street, and stop walking on the street, talking on your cell phone.
You know,
a young guy walked into my car, my stationary car today, because he and his friends palavering on the road.
And that's for the same reason I said that this is going to take an entire program, because there is so much. I have seen on more than one occasions dogs walk up on the sidewalk to the point where the pedestrian crossing is and wait and cross. I have seen this on
a dog in Grand Anse, and there's one on Kirani James.
I have seen it on numerous occasions.
Numerous times, yes.
If right? Some of us would just pay attention.
And I just wanted to talk about the human suffering caused by road traffic. They also cause heavy economic burden on victims and their families, okay? The loss, both through tremendous cost for the injured and through loss of productivity of those killed or disabled. More broadly, road traffic injuries have a serious impact on national economies, right? Because when we do a budget for the health, we do a budget for health for hypertension and diabetes and asthma and vaccines and all the rest. But those incidentals and people, especially our males who are injured, spend months in hospital, right? If we were charging the charge, it would be a large burden on the family, right? 3% of countries' annual gross domestic products go, and that's an average, go into taking care of challenges caused by road traffic accidents. I want to urge everybody to look back at how you use the street, how you use the road. Guess what? You have a right to use it, but you have a right to use it correctly.
Indeed.
Okay?
Yep.
Everybody has a right to use the road. Everybody must use the road correctly and responsibly. And above all, we need to teach our children how to cross so that when we're not there, they learn to cross. I see mothers crossing, their bags in their hand, and two little children in the middle of Melville Street. No. So let this be a conversation at home. I'm sure they'll have conversations in school, right? And let's try and reduce the risk, reduce the possibility of having an accident occur among anybody in our families.
Yes, indeed. Doc, well, that's all the time we have. And folks, we thank you so very much for staying with us. It wasn't it a pleasure sharing information with you. I do promise that we will do an entire program on road safety. It probably might be a good idea to invite the police so we can get some statistics. And we definitely will do an entire program on road safety. So thank you very much for staying with us. Don't forget, you can join me tomorrow evening right here, 8:30 for another Kaiso Talk. And this weekend at the National Stadium, the inaugural Classic Lighting Communal Track and Field Invitational. It's Saturday and Sunday at the stadium. Get your tickets and go out and enjoy great athletics. Thank you so much.
And today is World Nurses Day, and again we salute our nurses, indispensable part of the healthcare sector. We salute them, we thank them for their service and the sacrifice.
Yes,
we
indeed.
don't be talented, but our nurses still are great. Most of them are really hard-working people who go there and try to make us better every day.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much again, folks. Do have a good night. All the best.
Broadcasting from the top of Observatory.
Drug abuse, cancer,
Measles,